Welcome to the next video. In this video we're going to be talking about SI prefixes. So SI prefixes. Now SI prefixes are different from SI units. They are standard and they are international, exactly the same as what we've had before. That's what the SI stands for, but it's different to units. Units is what we're using to measure a quantity by. So I gave the example of kittens for a house, measuring how many kittens would be the width of a house. We prefer not to use kittens because obviously people don't have a bunch of kittens that they can take to a house and survey a house unless you're an elderly person. But you might actually choose to use meters instead because that's the SI unit. Now, prefixes are slightly different. So prefixes are used when we have maybe an extremely large number, let's use meters in this case, or an extremely small number where we have 0.000012 of a meter. We can put a prefix to make that number simpler. So there's less zeros, so it's simplifying the number. Now let's use something a little bit unorthodox to do this so I can explain the concept to you. So what I've got over here, I've got some of my friends and they have different values attached to them. So Gaz is a dinosaur and he's worth 10 to the power of 9 units, which is a billion. We've got Mel, and Mel is worth 10 to the power of 6, which is a million. Kevo, he's 10 to the power of 3 and he's worth 1,000. And Mighty Mike, he's worth 10 to the power of negative 3, that means 3 digits after the decimal point. And Eugene, the amoeba, 10 to the power of minus 6, and he's worth, or she, I'm not quite sure what gender Eugene is, but it's worth 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 digits after the decimal point. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to simplify this very first number, which is 120,000 meters, and I want to actually have a look at my friends here, and they are going to replace some digits. So I'm going to look at Kev. Kev here is worth 1,000, so I'm going to use Kev to replace 1,000 to make this number simpler. So if I want to put in a Kev, if I want to put a Kev in, I have to divide by what Kev's worth. So in this case, I've got 12,000. I'm going to divide it by 1,000. I can cross the zeros off like so, and I end up with 120. So this number now becomes 120 kevo meters. So now I've simplified the number by saying now it's worth 120 kevo meters. Now if I want to get rid of Kev and I want to get it back to its normal number, I need to actually times it by what Kev is worth. So Kev's worth 1,000, so 120 times 1,000 equals 120,000 meters. Now instead of using a robot to represent this prefix, what I'm going to use is a K instead. And this is exactly what we do. Instead of using a Kev, we actually use a K, which is a kilo, which represents 1,000. And these are our SI units that we have down here. These numbers represent these values for those units, and we can put them in to simplify. Let's have a look at another example just here. Alright, going back to this page, let's go for a really small number. So in this case we're going 0.00000123 meters. Alright, I'm looking at my friends again and seeing which one I can actually use. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Got 8 digits, so I might use Eugene. So if I want to add a Eugene, I need to divide by a Eugene. So I'm going to divide it by Eugene, and it's 10 to the power of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the simple way to do this is just to jump the decimal point 6 spots backwards. So it would be jumping back once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 and 6. So we end up with decimal points now here, 1.23 Eugene meters. Now there's another name that we actually have for Eugene, and that is called let's have a look, 10 to the power of 6, it's called a micro, and it's a funny U, just like Eugene is there. Oops, I should have just pressed there. Just like Eugene is, so it's 1.23, funny U, meters, micrometers. Now, if I want to get rid of a Eugene, I have to times by a Eugene. So if I had 1.23 times 0.00001, I'm going to get my original number 0.0000123 meters. So we can use these prefixes and to actually simplify the number. You can see that this number is a lot easier to write than this massive number here. We can see that 120 kilometers is a lot simpler than writing, 120,000 meters. So we can use those concepts with our prefixes now to simplify our numbers. So if we had a gigabyte of memory, which is a gig of a byte, we have a billion bytes of memory. If we had a megabyte, that's a million. If we had a kilometer, that's 1,000 kilometers. And we go down from here. If we had a millimeter, that's a thousandth of a meter. And that's how we use our prefixes. I hope that's been helpful in some way in how to convert backwards and forwards. Let me just explain the concept to you once again. If I wanted to add a kev, I divide by a kev. If I want to take a kev away, I times by the kev. Alright, think of kev as one of the prefixes. If I want to add a Eugene, I divide by a Eugene. If I want to take a Eugene away, I times by a Eugene. So hopefully that's made a little bit more sense to you when you're converting your SI units to use prefixes. Alright, that's the end of this video.